Pull up to any gas pump today, and you're playing a game that's been quietly rigged against you for decades. And the fix costs less than your morning coffee. I'm not talking about driving slower. I'm not talking about cruise control tips you've heard 1,000 times. I'm talking about something that sits on the shelf of every hardware store in the country, costs about $2, and based on the chemistry of how internal combustion actually works, may do something remarkable to your fuel consumption. This technique was written about in engineering papers. It was road-tested by hobbyists and small-scale researchers. And then, sometime around the early 1960s, it quietly fell out of mainstream automotive conversation. Nobody made a big announcement. There was no dramatic moment. It just stopped being talked about. And today, most people have never heard of it. Not because it doesn't work, but because the information simply never had a reason to stay visible in a world built around selling you more fuel, not less. So today, we're pulling it back out. We're going to look at what it is, what the science actually says, and exactly how to use it. Because at $2 a try, this is something every driver deserves to know about. Let me tell you what actually happens inside your engine every single time you drive. Your fuel injectors spray gasoline into the combustion chamber in a fine mist. Ideally, each droplet of fuel is small enough to combust completely when the spark fires. When combustion is complete, you get maximum energy from every drop of fuel you paid for. But here's the problem. Gasoline doesn't always atomize the way we'd like it to. Fuel has a property called surface tension, the same force that makes water bead up on a waxed car. When surface tension is higher, fuel droplets stay larger. Larger droplets don't combust as efficiently. Some of that fuel passes through without burning fully. That unburned fuel is essentially money going out your exhaust pipe. Now your car is designed to compensate for this to some degree. Engine management systems, catalytic converters, all of it works to minimize waste. But the fundamental physics of combustion haven't changed. If your fuel isn't atomizing cleanly, you're not getting the full value of what you're paying for at the pump. And what makes this frustrating is that the average driver has no way of knowing this is happening. Your gas mileage just quietly underperforms. You blame traffic, or your driving habits, or the fact that your car is getting older. You don't think about surface tension. But some people figured this out a long time ago. And what they found was that a small specific additive could change that equation in ways that are hard to ignore. Here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't always ignored. Back in the 1940s and 1950s, a number of independent researchers and hobbyist mechanics were experimenting with fuel additives. This was an era when automotive engineering was still relatively open territory. People tinkered, people tested, and the culture around cars was more experimental than it is today, where everything is sealed under plastic covers with warning stickers. Some of these researchers were looking at a compound called acetone. If you've ever used nail polish remover, you've used acetone. It's a simple organic solvent, completely legal, widely available, and remarkably inexpensive. What they noticed, anecdotally at first, and then more systematically, was that adding very small amounts of acetone to a tank of gasoline seemed to produce measurable changes in fuel efficiency. Not dramatic, but consistent. Repeatable enough to take seriously. Why did this fall out of mainstream discussion? Honestly, the answer is probably less dramatic than you might expect. Acetone didn't have a major corporate sponsor. There was no product to sell. As automotive technology evolved and engine management became more sophisticated, attention shifted to engineered solutions from manufacturers rather than garage-level experimentation. The information didn't get buried. It just never got amplified. It existed in small pockets of automotive forums, old DIY publications, and niche research papers, the kind of places most people never look. Until recently, when interest started picking back up, and some of the chemistry started getting a second look. So, what exactly is this substance? And why do some automotive researchers believe it may work? Acetone, chemically known as propanone, is one of the simplest ketone compounds. It's a natural byproduct of metabolism in the human body, which gives you a sense of how fundamentally non-exotic it is. In industrial settings, it's used as a solvent. In homes, it's in nail polish remover. It costs roughly $2 for a small container at any hardware store. The proposed mechanism behind its effect on fuel efficiency is this. Acetone has a significantly lower surface tension than gasoline. When you add a small amount of acetone to your fuel, a very small amount, which we'll discuss precisely, it may reduce the overall surface tension of the fuel mixture. Lower surface tension means finer atomization when the injector fires. Finer atomization means more complete combustion. More complete combustion means more energy extracted from each unit of fuel. That's the theory, and it's a chemically coherent one. Now, the honest answer is that peer-reviewed research on this specific application is limited. Most of what exists in the automotive space comes from enthusiast testing, which, while not controlled science, does represent real-world observation from real drivers tracking real miles per gallon over extended periods. What's interesting is that when you look at the reports from people who've tested this consistently, the results cluster in a particular range, not a doubling of fuel economy. Let's be clear about that. The claims you'll sometimes see online are exaggerated, but a modest, meaningful improvement? That pattern shows up repeatedly. There's also an important nuance about why results vary. The age of your engine matters. The condition of your fuel injectors matters. Whether you're mostly highway or city, driving matters enormously. Acetone is not a magic override of physics. It's a potential optimization of a process that's already happening. And what makes it worth discussing is this. For $2, the cost of testing is essentially nothing. All right, let's get into the actual process, because this is the part most people either get wrong or never find out about. The single most important thing to understand before anything else. The ratio matters enormously. Too little, and you may see no effect. Too much, and you risk issues. The ratio that gets discussed most frequently in documented testing is approximately 2 to 3 ounces of acetone per 10 gallons of gasoline. That's it. That's the entire intervention. If you have a 15-gallon tank, you're looking at roughly 3 to 4 ounces. Here's the practical process. Step 1. Get pure acetone. This part is critical. You want acetone that is as close to 100% pure as possible. The acetone found in most nail polish removers is not pure. It contains water and other additives that you don't want in your fuel system. Instead, go to a hardware store, a paint supply store, or order online. Look for acetone labeled for industrial or cleaning use, which is typically sold in its pure form. Hardware chains usually carry it near the paint thinners and solvents. A small can will cost you around $2. Step 2. Use a dedicated, clean measuring container. A measuring cup that you'll reserve only for this purpose. You don't want to guess at the quantity here. Precision matters. Step 3. Add the acetone to your fuel tank before you fill up with gas. This helps it mix thoroughly as the gasoline enters the tank. Measure your 2 to 3 ounces per 10 gallons, pour it into the empty or low tank, then fill with gas normally. Step 4. Track your results. This is where people often go wrong. They try it once and make a judgment call. Fuel economy is influenced by too many variables: traffic, temperature, load, tire pressure. For a single tank to be meaningful, give it at minimum 3 full tanks of consistent driving before drawing any conclusions. Keep your other habits the same. Document your miles per gallon each fill-up. The reason tracking matters is that this is a subtle effect, not a dramatic one. You're looking for a pattern across multiple data points, not a single dramatic result. Now, I already know what some of you are thinking. If this worked, everyone would be doing it. That's a completely reasonable response. And the honest answer is more nuanced than a simple yes or no. The automotive industry, broadly speaking, has very little incentive to promote something that reduces fuel consumption without selling any parts or products. That's not a conspiracy. It's just the reality of how commercial incentives work. An oil additive company, a performance parts manufacturer, even your local mechanic, none of them benefit financially from you pouring $2 of hardware store acetone in your tank. That doesn't mean the technique is being actively suppressed. It just means there's no marketing engine behind it. No advertising budget, no shelf placement. The information has to spread organically, which is exactly why most people have never heard of it. The other objection I hear is about engine safety. Fair question. At the concentrations we're discussing, 2 to 3 ounces per 10 gallons, acetone represents a tiny fraction of the total fuel volume, roughly 0.15% to 0.25%. Research on this specific question suggests that at these trace concentrations, acetone is unlikely to cause issues with modern fuel system components. However, rubber seals and certain gasket materials can be sensitive to solvents at higher concentrations, which is precisely why the ratio matters so much. Stick to the recommended amount, and the risk profile looks very different. The short version: the skepticism is healthy. The technique has genuine scientific reasoning behind it, and the risk at correct quantities, based on available information, appears minimal. But it warrants research and care, not blind faith. Before you go out and try this, there are a few things you genuinely need to know. Consult with a qualified mechanic before making any changes to your fuel system, especially if your vehicle is under warranty, has a turbocharged or high-performance engine, or uses any ethanol blend higher than standard pump gas. The information in this video is for educational purposes. No, it is not a substitute for professional mechanical advice. Acetone is flammable. Handle it accordingly. Don't smoke near it. Don't store open containers. Keep it away from heat sources. Some vehicle manufacturers may have specific guidance about fuel additives in their owner's manual. Worth a quick check before you start. And if you're outside the United States, regulations around fuel additives can vary. A brief check of your local regulations is worth doing. Finally, this doesn't replace the fundamentals. Proper tire inflation, clean air filters, appropriate engine maintenance. These things matter more than any additive. This technique is a potential optimization, not a substitute for basic upkeep. Here's what I want you to walk away with today. The car you drive every day is working against certain physical constraints. Fuel surface tension is one of them. The idea that a small, inexpensive additive might shift those constraints slightly in your favor isn't science fiction, it's chemistry. Whether it works consistently for your specific vehicle, under your specific driving conditions, is something only testing can answer. But the cost of finding out is $2 and a few minutes of your time. We spend enormous amounts of mental energy worrying about fuel prices. We watch the numbers at the pump. We grumble about it. And yet most of us have never spent 20 minutes looking at whether there's something simple and cheap we could do differently. That's what this channel is about. Not outrage, not conspiracy. Just the genuinely useful information that tends to get lost in the noise. If you try this, I genuinely want to know what happens. Track your numbers, give it a few tanks, and drop a comment with what you found. Real-world data from real drivers is more valuable than any single test. If this kind of deep dive into overlooked automotive knowledge is useful to you, subscribe and hit the notification bell. I dig through old research, engineering papers, and the kind of forum posts that nobody's indexed in years, and I bring back what's actually worth knowing. Next time, we're getting into something that mechanics have quietly known about for 30 years, but almost never mentioned to customers. And it involves nothing more than adjusting something you already have access to in your car right now. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and stop paying more at the pump than you have to.